Hey, welcome to Life in the Leadership Lane. I'm your host, Bruce Waller, where I get to talk to leaders that are making a difference in the workplace and in our community. What did they do to get started, and what are they doing to stay there? And today, I have another special guest as we continue our HR Southwest Conference spotlight, as I'm getting to talk to Felicia Taylor. Felicia is the Chief People Officer at WebPT, and she is a speaker this year at the 2022 HR Southwest Conference. She's certified in HR, and I'm so excited to have you on the show. Hey, how you doing, Felicia?
I'm good. Thank you very much for having me today, Bruce.
Oh my goodness! So you recently posted that you were going to be speaking at the HR Southwest Conference, and I said I want to get you on because you're going to be talking about the candidate experience, and I immediately that caught my attention because I think we're all like, how can we do that better? So, hey, have you been to the HR Southwest Conference in the past, or is this your first conference?
No, I've been in the past. It's been a while. Unfortunately, even with COVID, right? Like I don't know, it's been a few years, but it's always so energizing, and I really look forward to all the exciting user or attendee experience things that are going on this year. I saw Shirley had some really exciting things going on for attendees this year, so I look forward to it.
Shirley was phenomenal. I had her on the show a few weeks ago as she talked about one of the things they're really focused on was the attendee experience. So I'm sure that probably caught your attention. That is
Did.
fantastic. I love that. I love that. Hey, well let's kick this off. I would love for you before we get into the HR Southwest Conference. I would love for you to just share a little bit about your organization, WebPT, and how you serve your customers.
Yeah, absolutely. So web PT is kind of like what it sounds like, web and PT, so web physical therapist. So we're a mission-driven company focused on outpatient rehab therapy community. So we've created an innovative end-to-end process business solution. So we specifically give rehab therapy professionals the tools necessary to really simplify their operations, improve the patient journey, and accelerate their business growth. So our product suite is for the entire life cycle for building their rehab business, from treating the patient, our EMR, billing, scheduling, digital intake, and pretty much all of that. So the full life cycle for our physical therapists. So we're really proud of that.
I love that, and what meaningful work. I love everything about that. Hey, you said a word though that really it always catches my attention. That is mission driven. I love that. Talk a little bit about the importance of being a mission driven organization. I mean, you now you've not haven't been there for a long time, have you? And so knowing it's a mission driven organization, that probably helps you kind of with your decision making as well, about.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's something that, and again, with the candidate experience and your employer value proposition, right? It's a real it's a differentiator, right? Like, people are looking to be part of something that's bigger than them
Mm.
and to really, give back in a meaningful way. And they're looking for organizations who are in that space. And WebPT is definitely in that space. And when this opportunity was presented to me, and not only do I get the lovely chance to work with a former colleague of mine who's the CEO, but then to know what the mission of the company is, a female founded, female led, I mean, in a great space. I mean, how could I pass this up?
I lo Oh, man, I absolutely love that, and we're gonna talk all about the candidate experience. I wanna hear, what you're gonna be talking about at HR Southwest. You'll probably share some of the experiences you had, with your organization and maybe, what you see. But before we do that, I would love to know, and I have not known you for a long time. I know you through the Dallas HR organization, but I would love to hear the Felicia Taylor story. Like, where did you grow up, and how in the world did you get into HR and leadership and now speaking?
So I'm originally from Southern California, the Los Angeles area. But I've been living in Dallas for about 18 years now. I still have a lot of friends and family in California. we definitely try to make a few trips back every year. And you can't beat Southern California weather, especially when we've had, 5 weeks of triple digit heat in Texas. But I've been in the HR field for over 20 years with a variety of companies and roles. So I've worked in startups, family businesses, high growth companies, large public companies. So I've really seen a range of environments and really in needs. And so along that way, I've really developed some amazing relationships along the
Mm.
way. My first HR job over 20 years ago was for, ironically, an oil and gas company in Seal Beach, California. So I was hired at their corporate office to be an HR coordinator. My main responsibilities at the time was managing employee paper files, if you can remember the time when we had paper files, and also now what we call employee engagement. And so kind of the
Mm.
fun committee, if you would call it back then, but
Mhm.
now we know that to be employee engagement. I was promoted within months, and then handled, really, I learned workers comp and safety. And then from there I went to an advertising company, and I moved into a manager role, and I oversaw payroll and recruiting and employee relations and immigration. And I really learned a lot in that role. It was my opportunity to leverage my bilingual skills. I speak Spanish, and
Mm.
I was able to get into payroll and immigration, things that I never really had experienced before. And so I grew a lot. My husband and I, got married, and we relocated to Texas. And then I had to really navigate a new market and establish, new relationships and networks. And that's kind of when I started that second part of my career in Texas. And so I've been here ever since.
Oh, wow. Whenever you talk about relocation, you're talking my language.
Yeah.
But and I know how tough that can be, but and I want to get into the conference, but I want to just ask you, we're going to talk about the Kennedy experience, but what about your experience trying to build that network? Do you remember how hard that was? I know I talked to a lot of people that relocate and they take that chance and they talk about how that's really what helped them get to where they are today is building that network. Do you remember that, how hard that was, and how did you do that?
Yeah, it was, I mean, it was definitely difficult, really taking advantage of the HR networks. I was in Fort Worth at the time, and the equivalent version, I can't remember, of Dallas HR.
Mhm.
It was the Fort Worth chapter of it. And I think at the time, that's when I actually met Sandra McLean. I don't know if you know
Mm. I
Sandra.
do know Sandra
Yes,
McLean.
I've known Sandra for years, and she and I met at a breakfast networking event. And I told her, I was new to the area, and funny story is that's how I landed at Manatech. Is she and I just really connected. She didn't have a particular head count at the time.
Mhm.
And but she was like, one thing about Sandra that I learned, and she found a way. She was always very, if she had an eye for talent, she'd find a way to make it work. And so she brought me on as a contractor at 1099. And so I did recruiting for Manatech for maybe 11 months or so before I ended up with Park Place. But yeah, so she brought
Wow.
me, kind of got my feet wet in the HR space in Texas, and then from there I was really just on in my career.
I talk all the time about your network as your net worth, and of course, Fort Worth HR is a phenomenal HR chapter in the Fort Worth area, and so I'm sure they're going to love to hear that you were part. They were part of your journey. Well, I appreciate that. And were there, like, have you? I mean, here you are, you're chief people officer, and
Mhm.
it's been an incredible journey. Have there been some people that I always like to talk about mentors. I think it's so important because I feel like the great leaders have had mentors that have helped them get to where they are today. Any mentors that stand out to you? I know you mentioned one, with Sandra. Any other mentors that really have helped you get to where you are?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest investments that you can make in yourself in general is mentorship, and
Mhm.
I personally intentionally mentor those that are interested in that investment in themselves, and I think that that's part of my give back as well. But I think it doesn't have to be as structured or as formal as
Mhm.
people think it should be either. It doesn't have to be programmatic. You could
Mhm.
even have an advisory board of people that, that consists of individuals that you trust, that have a diverse set of backgrounds and experiences that, can give you different perspectives on important decision points in your career or in your life. But, you would think that I would have had a plethora of people that have invested in me to kind of help me navigate along the way. And unfortunately, I've even asked for mentorship and not quite have received it
Mm.
to the point that I've wanted it, but I never really let that get in my way. I've
Mm.
even I've taken mentorship from afar, meaning I've watched people and
Mm.
I've like made them
Mm.
my mentor without them knowing it. I've taken mentorship from people like of what not to do. I've taken every experience along this journey as a learning experience and mentorship and guidance for myself. So I have met some great people who have given me nuggets, and I wouldn't take that away from that and everything that's
Mm.
contributed. But if you would say like a mentor in particular, I wouldn't be able to kind of give you like a list of names.
It's interesting you say that, and I appreciate you sharing that because I bet that is a common theme for a lot of people as well, is because it doesn't have to be formal. It doesn't have to be structured. There's many mentors that I would say are authors, right? We read these
Oh,
books, right? And
oh
all
my
of a sudden you're
goodness.
like, oh my gosh, John Maxwell has been an incredible mentor in my life. And he probably doesn't even know that, he's been mentored to millions and all these
You
different
have
people.
no idea, Bruce. I have a lot of book mentors.
Right? And then when we go to a networking event, I always tell people all the time, people are watching you, right? So what do you want to display? Do you want to display like inspiration to where people see that and they go that direction? Or do you want to see the what not to do, like you just mentioned? And I think that is absolutely important. Well, before last question I want to ask you before we get into to the conference talk is I always like to talk about purpose and I always talk about find your lane. And I was curious, was there a moment when, I mean, here you were in Southern California, with paper documents, as you were talking about before. Was there a moment though when you found your lane, you found your purpose that said, I found what I love to do, I'm moving this direction? In any thoughts around that?
I've given that question some thought over time, and to be honest with you, there hasn't been one defining moment. I think
Hmm.
from the time that I stepped into the space of HR, I've never really looked back. I've never questioned, is this really what I want to do? I've just really focused on climbing and moving
Mm.
forward. But one of the things that I do know is that it's been an evolution of growth and self-reflection, right? So
Mm.
um, I've never really had many visual examples of me in the C-suite along my journey to even think that it was an option to list it as a goal early in my career. So I would say that what I have learned in these later stages in my career, that I think my purpose has become to normalize and demystify the idea of this being an option for people who identify with me.
Mhm.
Like there wasn't a blueprint for me. And so if I can do anything, it'll be really to contribute to the creation of that blueprint for generations after me, just to make it easier to navigate and make it quicker to get here, really. So I think that's kind of what I'm falling into my purpose in this career of mine. I'm still early in my career, so I don't want to solidify it, because and you
Mm,
have to be agile in life in general. But that's kind of what I'm kind of uncovering.
I love that. Whenever you share that, it reminds me of a quote I once heard, and it said, once you get to the top of the mountain, you're really at the bottom of the next mountain.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there going, "Oh, man, here she is. She's at the top of the mountain, but yet in her perspective, she's at the bottom of the next mountain, and she's just gonna keep climbing, keep showing the way." And I love that. Oh my goodness, I knew this was gonna be good. If you're listening right now, you need to be taking notes. You're gonna get a lot out of this conversation. Well, let's talk the HR Southwest Conference. It's gonna be coming up October the 16th through the 19th in Fort Worth, Texas, and it's one of my favorite conferences of the year. And of course, you're going to be talking about the Candidate Experience 2.0. Talk a little bit about that. Like, first of all, where did that idea come up about talking about the Candidate Experience 2.0?
Yeah, well, first of all, I'm super excited to be speaking. This is all new for me, just, public speaking and, podcasts. And
Okay, let
it's
me
been
let
a,
me let me ask you this. Let me ask you this. Did you so you've been to the conference before, but is this your first time speaking at the conference?
this is my first time speaking. Yes.
Oh my goodness, I'm so excited for you. This is gonna be energizing. Okay,
Yes.
okay, okay, go ahead.
So yeah, I'm really looking forward to sharing just my perspective and
Yeah.
my thought process on things, right? When it comes to the candidate experience, because really, in today's market, it's really competitive. We've known
Mhm.
this for the last couple of years, and the reason why I called it Candidate Experience 2.0 is because it's an evolution. We have
Yeah.
to change the way we think about the candidate experience. And for a long time, the candidates were lucky if they got an interview with the
Mm,
company,
okay.
and so the tables have kind of turned where you're kind of lucky if you can find a candidate to interview. So the candidates have shifted the power to the point where they're doing their research, they're interviewing you, they're looking at your glass door, they're trying to find out why they should come join you and bring their talents to your organization, and what differentiates you from the next company that is offering just as well the same money. So the money doesn't make it the differentiating point, especially when it comes to good talent that you want to keep around. I mean, there are those that chase the money, that's fine, and you're going to get what you pay for. But when you're looking for people that want to stay with the organization and contribute and bring a lot more to the company, and be a culture add and not just a culture fit, right? Then that's really how are you going to position yourself. And so the candidate experience really talks about your employer value proposition. And so
Mm,
I am providing a very basic, almost like playbook that the attendees can walk away from and pretty much implement in real time. And think about this, like we're going into, this is going to be in October. Well, most organizations have slowed down with their hiring for the second half of the year. What better time to get ready for next year
mm,
than the second half of the year? Use this downtime to reset your employer value proposition. Look at your hiring process, look at your job descriptions. Are your job descriptions really selling your organization? Do they have the right type of language? Are they inclusive? Are they a list of, is it a laundry list of things that you're asking these candidates to qualify for? Or are you telling them like this is what we're looking for and why you should be here? Is your web experience, a good UI UX experience for them? Is it a one click or is it 100 clicks? Like, what does that look like? Just go back and revisit this so that you can make sure that your drop off rate isn't, ridiculous. All of those things. So those are things that I'm going to go over. They're very, common sense. They're very doable. That
mm.
you don't need a huge team. You don't need a huge budget. There are things that are within your control. And that's one of the things that I realize is working in smaller organizations. You are you don't have the resources. You have to do what you can do within your span of control. And so that's what I am offering, is what can you do within your span of control?
Okay, there is so much there. I absolutely love that. And so I would say the main, yeah, the main thing, you don't need a huge budget. You just need to come be prepared to take notes and ask questions and think through things that you can take back to the office. I love that. The employee value proposition. When you mentioned job descriptions right now, first of all, I want to ask this: when does the candidate experience, like, when does that start? Does that start from when someone's thinking about joining the company and they're starting to do research, or when does that actually start?
Absolutely. It starts on your social, your website,
Mm.
your Glassdoor, anything that is any material like advertising about your company. That's when, and then from the point that they engage with your company, that's when the candidate experience really starts.
Hey, well, let me ask you this. Okay, I'm just gonna. I know that you've been within your company for less than a year, and so
Sure.
you probably have this, and so this is why I want to ask you this, because I bet you there's some people out there that are thinking, okay, I've got 100 things on my list. How do you attack that? Right. So I'm sure you came in the organization, you're like, hey, we do all these things well. Here's some things we need to maybe take a look at, and all of a sudden you're making this list.
Yeah.
How do you take that from an overwhelming stage to a manageable stage? Any thoughts around how you've been able to do that, or what you've been able to see, or some tips for someone listening?
I was just watching a movie last night and there was this joke and it says, how do you eat an elephant? Well, like this dad was telling his daughter, how do you eat an elephant? And she looks at him like, I don't know, it sounds like so, how do you eat an elephant? And he says, one bite at a time. You
Yeah.
just have to ruthlessly prioritize and you have to really look at, what leads to the next thing. So
Mhm.
there has to be foundational things in place. Like you can't go off and do things that supersede other things, right? Like if you don't have like an online application,
Yeah.
it
Okay.
doesn't matter if you have all these other things. You need an
Mm,
online application. So it has to make sense. You have to use like common sense. And
mhm,
so you just have to look at just the journey. Like if you just to map out like the candidate journey, like do you have information? If you don't have information on the company, well then you maybe start there. So you just have to look at what does your laundry list look like and prioritize that, and then look at your resources and what you have in terms of help, and then go from there. Okay, this is what I can do with what I have, and the time frame that I have will look like this. And you just chop away at it.
I love that. I love when you talk about foundation. So you got to determine, hey, what's the foundation? Where do we need to start there? You mentioned online application, which is fantastic. Share a couple of I don't know. You don't have to give your whole presentation away, but I would love for you to share. Hey, what are a couple of things that you're going to try to stress during your talk at the conference for someone that's listening, and you're like, hey, you need to be in this session because I'm going to talk about these couple of things that might be helpful.
The elements of a great candidate experience. That's
Mm,
one of the areas that I'll talk about.
okay.
Anything, we've talked about the application process, but, clear timelines, that's one of the things that we miss a lot, especially if we don't have real, a lot of resources, but just being clear about the timelines of the overall hiring process and what to expect. That doesn't take a lot, but communication,
Mhm,
right? And then communication. Demonstrating your company values during the interview process to really weave that into what somebody can expect and once they are an employee, to show that you do live those values that you're promoting in your employer value proposition on your website when you're marketing, so that they start to experience that from the early stages of the process. Respecting their time,
mhm,
follow-ups, and just really letting them know a position has been filled. Being prepared, ensuring that there's
mm,
a streamlined interview process, and everybody in the process is prepared. And then really in this market, you've got to move swiftly. You've
Mm.
got to make decisions very quickly, be decisive, and just move really swiftly in this market. Because if not, somebody else will snatch up your talent. So those are just some things that I will, cover in this session.
I love your energy and your passion. It just like it comes through this screen. I can't even imagine if we were together right now, how energized that would be. Hey, I'm just curious. I mean, as you're talking here, I just feel your conviction. It's wonderful to hear. What drives you, like in your everyday as a leader? I'm curious.
Oh, that's a really good question. I would just say the ability to make an impact and to make a difference. Like
Yeah.
that's really what drives me.
Yeah, I love that. When I wake up, Mondays are my recording days,
Hmm.
and I'm so excited for Mondays. I go and I get my workout in, and I think about, because I know that these interviews are going to help a lot of people, and from some of the things that you share, and so that drives me. A lot of people say, "How long are you going to do this podcast?" I'm going to just keep doing it till I run out of people to talk to, because it drives me. I learn so much, and then I get the opportunity to share. So I appreciate that. Hey, well, let me ask you this. Okay, so you finish. Let's just like vision this, right? You finish your presentation. Everybody gives you a standing ovation. It's going to be absolutely fantastic. I'm sure of it. What are you hoping? Like when people come up and talk to you later, though, what do you like hope that attendees will share with you, that maybe some takeaways that they learn from you?
I'm just hoping that they found it relevant. I'm hoping that they find it timely. I'm hoping
Mhm,
that they find it practical, and I'm just hoping that they find it worth their time.
mhm,
Because they have choices. They, you get an agenda. There's an app. You can choose which sessions you want to sign up
mhm.
for, and I'm hoping that they feel like they left that they feel like they have enough information that they can go back and get started and actually implement something that's going to make a difference in their organization.
The candidate experience 2.0, Felicia Taylor, she will be in that app. You will have a choice to go see her. I want to tell you, you need to go see her
I'm
October the 16th through the 19th at the HR Southwest Conference. It's going to be absolutely phenomenal. Hey, I'm not going to ask you anymore, because I don't want to give away any more to the teams. I want them to come to your session, but I do want to ask you this: preparation. I talk to a lot of speakers. I do a lot of speaking myself. I'm going to be speaking at the conference as well. I hope we're not
Yeah.
speaking at the same time. That's for sure. Energizing HR is what I'm going to be speaking about.
Oh,
But
nice.
I'm curious, preparation wise, like, is it more to prepare than what people think, or is it like, what's the preparation process been for you? Has it been fulfilling? Has it been exhausting? Tell me. I'm just curious from your perspective.
I would say it's a balance of definitely fulfilling and you kind of want to eat, like you have to stop yourself. You're like, stop putting information in there, like cut it down, like we were talking, like you have to like dwindle it down to the time slot you need. So, making sure that it's clear, concise, and
Mm,
easy to digest, and not going and adding more stuff. So I think just disciplined. I have to stay disciplined. I have to
mm,
make sure that I'm very clear,
yeah.
and that's the preparation, is making sure that you're clear.
I think a lot of times whenever I'm speaking too, I have so much in there, I have to cut it back, because you can give someone too much, right? Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, that was so much. I don't know where to start, versus saying, hey, you know what? Here's 1 or 2 points. Just go with that. And I've found that's worked out best for me. It's just hard to get there.
Well, sometimes less is more, right? And
Yeah.
simple but when you're your own, you are your own worst critic. So you're
Mhm.
like, this doesn't look like enough. So,
I love it. Well, this is going to be absolutely fantastic. The Candidate Experience 2.0. I'm super excited about that. I'll put the registration, all the information in the show notes, so people can learn more about you and your topic. Hey, I want to ask you one more question before we go to it's time to accelerate in the show. I always like to ask this question, Felicia, and that is, have you ever been given any advice during your, we've talked a little bit about your journey today. Have you ever been given any advice? It was just so good that you just find yourself sharing that with others?
I received some really good advice from a leader earlier in my career. I was at Park Place, Lexus. I was working there, and Gary Venner was the general manager, and he was one of the first business leaders who invested in me as an HR leader. And so he really leaned in and invited me to a lot of the business meetings, and I really, that's when like things clicked, and I started to understand the value of being a business partner and
Mm,
not the traditional personnel viewpoint of human resources. So I really started to pivot at that point in my career and become more of a business partner. But what he shared with me is he recognized that he couldn't be good at everything in the business, right?
mhm,
So he really had to surround himself and hire people around him that had different skill sets than him and diverse viewpoints than him, and that would complement him. But not only did he do that, he really acknowledged, celebrated, and recognized them for those skill sets so that
mm,
they really stepped up and excelled and were very empowered to leverage those skill sets so that they wanted to do more and be more under his leadership. So he is to this day a very inspirational and great leader who has gotten some amazing things out of his people who work for him. And
mm,
I kind of practice the same
mm,
thing. I surround myself with individuals who are really good at what they do, and then I celebrate them for that, and I tell them, look, that's your superpower, and I'm all over it, and so I'm gonna let everybody know that that's your superpower, and I celebrate them for that, and I don't take credit for that. I give them credit for that, and I want everybody to know that. And I make sure that everybody understands that that's what I'm doing, so that they can learn from that and hopefully take that as well and their leadership style, and practice that as well. I'm not being secretive about that or keep that for myself. I want to
mm.
spread that.
Man, I got to tell you, I have chills listening to that because I heard two words there. The first word I heard was empower. You empower your people. You hire the right people, and you are empowering them to go do what they do best. And I absolutely love that. I find that as a common thread for high performers. That is for sure. I had Toby Rowland on the show, and he talked about a leader that he had, and that was his superpower. Is he empowered people. And the second thing you said was, I think a lot of people on the show also need to hear that, and that it was learn to become a better business partner. Always trying to improve that to be a better business partner, whether you're an HR business partner or you're a sales business partner or a financial or a C-suite, whatever that is, building those relationships, learning what others need to help them get better so you can work together, right?
Absolutely. We're all here for the same reason, right? I mean, if we're working in an organization, there's one name on the building. I mean, not literally anymore because everybody's working
Mhm.
from home, but I mean, there's one organization and we're
Yeah.
all working for the same goal. And if you can get there, I mean, great things can happen.
You are an inspirational leader. That is for sure. Felicia, I
Thank
have
you.
absolutely loved that. Hey, well, we're going to shift to the last part of the show. I like to ask some fun questions as we kind of wrap up, as it's time to accelerate. And first question I would like to ask is, you've traveled quite a bit. And of course the conference is going to be in Fort Worth this year, but I always like to ask, like, do you have a favorite city that you have traveled to or you like traveling to? Any thoughts around that?
Yeah, I do. I have a lot, but I mean, one that comes top of mind is New Orleans because why not? I mean,
Okay. I cannot believe it. Okay. So I just came from Sherm National, which is in New Orleans.
okay.
Did you
Oh
go?
yeah.
Did you
Nope,
go?
I didn't make
Okay.
it. Nope.
So it was my first visit to New Orleans. And
Really?
I was there for the 5 days during the Sherm conference, and then my wife flew down and we celebrated our anniversary there for a couple more days. I think we were there for 8 days, but it was a fun. Other than the heat, it was a phenomenal experience.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, from you name it, music, culture,
Mm.
people, food. I mean, it's just yeah, it's
I
amazing.
love that.
And
I've had other people talk about New Orleans before and I can't relate because I hadn't been there. And now I can like, when you start talking, I'm like, oh yeah, I can relate. Hey, well, let me ask you this. You've been at the conference before. You're speaking this year for your first time. What are you looking most forward to attending this year's conference?
well, now that, I was gonna say learning, but now I'm just like so intrigued by this like attendee experience that you and Charlie were talking about, because I'm all about the candidate experience. So this attendee experience like has me like super intrigued.
Me too. So I interviewed Shirley Johnson. She's a 2022 conference director, and go check that out if you haven't heard her episode on the podcast. But she said this year they are really focused on the attendee experience, and so she got my attention as well. So I'm excited about that. Hey, well, let me ask you this, Felicia. Other than working and now preparing for speaking, what energizes you like outside of work?
The funny thing is, I'm actually more of an introvert than an extrovert. So, what actually energizes me is quiet time, meditation, alone time. That really
Mm.
recharges my battery. So, that's really what energizes me
I
to be interesting.
I got to tell you, I get energized because I love reading books, and
Mm.
are you a book reader
I am a book reader. I
or a book
cheat.
listener?
I have to like it's weird because like there's some books that I have to have physical copies of. And so like I toggle between Audible and the physical book because I need to see, so yeah, I'm definitely a book reader. I go through quite a few books.
Oh my goodness, I could tell. Okay, this is my last question as we wrap up the show, and one of my favorite questions, Felicia. Felicia, 10 years older, is around the corner and she's knocking at your front door, and you're going to go answer that door. What is she going to tell you?
I think she would say to me, thank you. Thank you
Mm,
for believing in us. And thank you for investing in us
mm.
because it paid off 10 years later.
Belief. That's a big word. That's one of my favorite words, belief. That is absolutely fantastic. That is a wise 10-year older Felicia. I love that. Hey, well, thank you so much for coming on to the show. I cannot wait to share this episode with everybody. Your wisdom, your perspective, and all things HR conference. If someone wanted to connect with you, maybe before the conference, to learn a little bit more about you, is there a way that they could connect?
So
Mm,
I'm on LinkedIn. That's about it with my social media. Unfortunately, that's all I got is LinkedIn.
perfect. And if you do connect with Felicia on LinkedIn, be sure and let her know you heard her on the podcast. It makes that connection so much easier, I guess, if you will. Start being a good business partner, but let her know that you heard her podcast and maybe even share something that stood out. That's always helpful. And so again, I can't thank you enough for coming on the show. I can't wait to see your session, the Candidate Experience
Yes.
2.0. It's going to be absolutely fantastic at the HR Southwest Conference. Again, I'll put all the information in the show notes. I can't wait.
Thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure, Bruce. And I look forward to seeing your session too.
Awesome. I can't wait to share this. I'll talk to you later.
All right. Bye.